Watch this.
Rather than impose measured guardrails, SB 1 bans the care outright, no matter how critical it is for an individual patient.
Tennessee's ban on transgender medical treatment for minors was argued in the nation's highest court today. And the conclusion SCOTUS comes to will have a direct impact on Idaho's ban on gender-affirming care for kids. You ever heard of Zyn? Okay, so what about Zyn, but instead of nicotine, it has caffeine? One Bishop Kelly grad had an idea for a better, healthier boost, and his success is sky high. World War II ended almost 80 years ago, which means there aren't many people left to tell the story of what life was like in the Nazi concentration camps. But if you knew one was coming to town, you can bet you'd want to hear his story of survival.
It doesn't matter what parents decide is best for their children. It doesn't matter what patients would choose for themselves. And it doesn't matter if doctors believe this treatment is essential for individual patients.
Well, what matters when it comes to gender-affirming care for children is about to be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. And that matters because their decision will likely have an immediate impact on the state of Idaho and its ban on transgender medical care for minors. Today, the High Court heard arguments in the United States versus Skermeti, the lawsuit to try to block the Tennessee ban on puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or surgeries. It's a very similar law to Idaho's, which is also being challenged and working its way through the courts. Today's hearing in D.C. on the Tennessee case took 2.5 hours. But before we get to what was said today, it might be a good time for a quick run-through of how we got here, how transgender care for children took such a big slice of the state government's attention. Back in April of 2021, Arkansas became the first state to ban gender-affirming care for minors, overriding a governor's veto to get it done. Well, that law also made it illegal for doctors to refer patients elsewhere, which is why it would be eventually struck down 2 years later by a federal judge who ruled the ban violated the due process and equal protection rights of transgender youths and their families. It also violated the First Amendment rights of doctors for not being able to refer a patient out of state. It was during that deliberation, those few months before that, Idaho was busy crafting and passing its own version of the same bill without the referral part. House Bill 71, passed in March of 2023, became law in April and the subject of a lawsuit in May. The plaintiffs in Poe versus Labrador, two transgender teenagers and their families, they claim pretty much the same thing as Arkansas and Tennessee's legal challenges. It goes against the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection and due process. And Idaho's Vulnerable Child Protective Act was temporarily blocked from going into effect days before it was supposed to go into effect on January 1st of this year, only to have that injunction stayed and by the U.S. Supreme Court in April, who decided, well, that law could be enforced here in Idaho for everyone but the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. Poe versus Labrador is still with the District Court of Idaho. Meanwhile, the Tennessee law has taken a similar path. Passed in March of 2023, a temporary injunction before it went into effect, and that injunction stayed. But the Supreme Court agreed to hear the U.S. versus Skermeti back in June. And today, well, this was the day they heard it. Once again, Boise High grad and current Solicitor General with the Justice Department, Elizabeth Proliger, spoke for the U.S. Today, she made the case the Tennessee law violates the Equal Protection Clause because, well, she says if a boy asks for hormone therapy, which matches his assigned gender at birth, well, he could get it. But if a girl asks for those same meds that don't match her assigned gender, she is denied. Proliger argued this law should be sent back to the lower court because it classifies on the basis of sex. In an exchange with Justice Samuel Alito, who pointed to a recent study in Sweden and the Cass report from the UK, which showed maybe the benefits don't outweigh the risk for all, Proliger was asked if the DOJ would like to change its petition. She admitted there was a lot of debate here and abroad about who should get what care and when, but she declined.
But I stand by that there is a consensus that these treatments can be medically necessary for some adolescents, and that's true no matter what source you look at.
But for the general run of minors, do you dispute the proposition, in fact, that in almost all instances, the judgment at the present time of the health authorities in the United Kingdom and Sweden is that the risks and dangers greatly outweigh the benefits? Do you dispute that?
I do dispute that because if you actually look at how those jurisdictions are addressing this issue, they have not outright banned this care. The CAS report says at multiple points that this care can be medically indicated for some transgender adolescents. And of course it's true that they have called for a more individualized approach to these issues.
Individualized instead of these blanket bans. As for the state of Tennessee, their defense was the Tennessee law does not discriminate based on sex, but rather based on the purpose of the treatment. Children can get puberty blockers to treat early onset puberty, but not a treatment for gender dysphoria. The Solicitor General of Tennessee called transgender care for minors risky, unproven medical interventions.
Of course, the parents are trying to do the best they can and get the best treatment for their kids, but we've had multiple instances in somewhat recent history where we have stuff like lobotomy, eugenics, that had widespread acceptance among the medical community, and the state had to intervene as a regulator to protect its children. It becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk, even taking aspirin. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other, one person of one sex from another sex, from receiving that benefit?
So that is the Supreme Court, or the question the Supreme Court will be deciding. And that decision could have implications for one of the bedrock principles of America's anti-discrimination laws, on the basis of sex. And early indications based on the line of questioning today, the court seems to be leaning in favor of the state of Tennessee, which in turn would lean towards supporting Idaho's transgender care for minors ban as well. Although they're not both written the exact same, they're similar. SCOTUS is expected to have a decision on this case in June of next year. Well, people have been chewing tobacco going back as far as the 1400s. Native Americans, like Central and Southern Americans, were some of the first to do it. Then in the 18th and 19th centuries, it became commercialized here in the United States of America. And while the old chewing tobacco brands continue to hold their place in the market, addiction has allowed new brands to continue to emerge all over the place. You might remember Skull Bandits back in the 1980s. That was chewing tobacco in a self-contained pouch. Well, that idea was revived in 2009 when another type of nicotine pouch was developed and brought to the U.S. Those pouches are becoming more popular because of the range in flavors, and of course, it's a cleaner way to chew. Well, now there's another new product on the shelf, but rather than feed the nicotine addiction, it's trying to curb it with caffeine. Boise father and son put it together, and Hunter Funk has their story.
Some business ideas come from finding a solution to a complex problem. For Dean Herkenrath, the problem was nicotine use in 8th grade.
Dino came home from school one day and he was like, "Dad, have you heard about Zyn?"
That's when I first started seeing my peers, coaches, and teammates using nicotine tobacco products on and off the field.
Dean and his dad Mike say the pro athletes that all his teammates looked up to would flaunt using tobacco products, which in turn was influencing people around him. By Dean's junior year at Bishop Kelly High School, he envisioned the solution.
What if you could put healthy products in these pouches, such as caffeine, vitamin C, nootropics, B12? And I came to my dad and I was like, "Dad, we could have something here. We could actually create something amazing here. There's nothing created yet for this." And that's when, honestly, Deckies was born.
It took more than 2 years of research and design. The father-son duo went to Canada, but couldn't get the right ingredients in the pouch. Then West Virginia, but the producer couldn't make the pouches white. Finally, they found a production facility in Denmark that can make 500,000 cans a week.
We actually did it, which is hard to do.
It's now a family business.
My sister's doing orders. My mom's doing packaging orders. Me and my dad are on calls every day.
Yeah. Our family dinners are board meetings, right? We're at the table. Everyone's got their jobs that we kind of bring up about Deckies.
My dad had a family business with his dad, so it's really cool that we were able to do the same.
It has 40 milligrams of caffeine, which is like drinking half a cup of coffee, in a pouch, with no nicotine or tobacco. The idea is that this will help fight the habit of those who are used to putting a pouch in their lip and it's working. Within the last 7 months,
I knew we were always going to be able to get here, but just not this fast.
their vision is now sitting on the shelves, starting locally with a partnership at Jackson's.
They took a chance on a local boy.
It's also on Amazon, Walmart.com, and TikTok Shop. Even USA Baseball and other athletes are beginning to reach out to build partnerships.
We are projected to be in 500 stores in the next 12 months with $1.5 million in revenue.
They even got to be on season 12 of
Amazon,
Entrepreneur
TikTok,
Elevator Pitch.
I have to choose you with myself.
Are you serious right now? Are you serious?
This family's vision is more than building a business, but to kick a habit that's had a grip on families for decades.
Because it could save a life one day, you know? I mean, people get addicted for 30, 40 years, and I don't know how long that takes you off your lifespan. So it's kind of cool to think, you know, if they were able to switch over to Deckies, you know, that could kind of steer the direction of their health with their life.
And Dean is currently at the University of Arizona, majoring in business administration and minor in entrepreneurship. Fitting, right? And there's more to come. They're working on going further than just here in the West, doing a national distribution. The two are working with professional teams and a big retailer, and they can't release all the details just yet, but it's all in the works. They say 2025 is going to be a big year.
Okay, it's called Deckies?
Yes.
How'd that come about?
So I had to ask about this too because I'm not that cool when it comes to this stuff. But
Yeah.
I guess it's been known, and most recently with, you know, Zins, kids are calling it the upper deck and the lower deck. So they'd
Gotcha.
always say, give me a Deckies, in turn. Trademarked.
All right.
New
Now that
product.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Upper deck, lower deck. All right.
Upper deck,
Got it.
lower
All
deck.
right. Thanks, Hunter.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we are living in the 21st century, right? Well, now we have a revival of tuberculosis. It's hit Meridian High School. Don't worry, though. Health officials, they're not too worried about it just yet. There's also something else that won't die out. The Greater Idaho Movement. We're trying to give it life through the president-elect. Abby Davis has details on those and more in today's 411.
Heads up, Meridian High School students. At least one student was diagnosed with tuberculosis between August and November. Central District Health says there isn't exposure risk, but they are investigating if any TB transmission might have occurred at the school. Letters are going to staff and parents of students who may have come into contact with this person. Symptoms include a chronic cough, fever, or persistent night sweats. But don't worry, it is safe to go to school, and most people who are exposed don't actually get TB. A jury trial is set about a Valley County 8th grade boy killed by a tree along Highway 55. Court records show the trial will be in March of 2026. In the lawsuit, Colton Jones' parents claim the Idaho Transportation Department was negligent and caused the death of their son. In June of 2023, a dead tree fell on top of Colton's grandmother's car. The tree killed him and injured his grandma. Documents and statements from ITD show the agency knew about the dead trees as early as November 2021. It wasn't until after the accident that ITD removed the dead trees.
Basically, they just got tired of Portland and Salem deciding that everybody needed to do the same thing.
The Greater Idaho Movement is taking a greater step at trying to push their grassroots mission forward. Today, they sent a letter to President-elect Donald Trump asking to push Idaho's border west into eastern Oregon so they can become Idaho because they claim they are more like us. For context, there has never been this drastic of a border change. The Caldwell Night Rodeo is chiming in on the approval of a new hotel. And they're happy about it, saying in part, we believe the planned hotel development could improve the overall experience for our rodeo fans and visitors. We told you to go, but in case you missed it, the Capitol Christmas tree is lit for the holiday season. The tree lighting was last night with festivities to celebrate. And of course, Governor Brad Little and the First Lady were there to help ring in the cheer. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
There aren't too many of us who've had a chance to listen to the chilling story of the Holocaust from someone who survived it. The Council for Holocaust Awareness of Idaho is giving you that chance. They came up with the idea to bring in a Holocaust survivor, or a relative of one, to the Gem State so you can hear their story, to learn about their experience. 89-year-old Pete Metzelaar, who now lives in Seattle, spoke in Boise last night, and he's going to speak tonight in Meridian. Aspen Schumpert spoke to him today.
And I always make a joke, I forgot what I had for dinner last night, but I remember so much when it happened between the age of 6 and 10.
Pete Metzelaar was a Jewish boy born in Amsterdam. And at the age of 6, everything he had was taken away.
After my entire family, with the exception of my mother, got arrested by the Nazis through the help of the so-called underground, my mom and I went into hiding.
For 2.5 years, Pete and his mother hid on a Christian family's farm.
Many times when they had German raids, we would be hiding underneath the floorboards in the farm. Also, close to the farm was a small forest. Mom and I hid in this cave as the Germans were ransacking the farm looking to arrest people.
What was that like to lose your loved ones and see them get taken away?
Of course, that was very, very frightening because it already happened to my entire family. What happened to Grandma and Grandpa? What happened to Dad? Why aren't they here? What am I doing in this hole? So, you know, those were the aspects of extreme fright. All the time that you couldn't exist. You didn't never talk to anybody because it could be your last day.
Pete says when World War II was over, it was a relief.
With one exception, none of the family came back, and we didn't know what happened. We do today.
4 years after the war, Pete came to America at the age of 14.
When liberty and freedom is taken away from you, it's a devastating thing, but then when it's returned, it's not like hitting a light switch. It takes a while after the war. Can I go outside and play soccer with my friends? Or do I have to look behind me? Is somebody going to arrest me because who I am, what I am? It takes time.
Now, at 89, he's been telling his story for 20 years. Why?
How do you expect the kids to know? Because if they've never heard of this, it's an event a long time ago. The importance to me is not just my personal story, but in daily events right in this country and over the world. Unless if you have some information about the Holocaust, about how it transpired, there are some signs today similar to those before Hitler came into power. How do you recognize when it starts to happen again if you're not taught about it?
Soon there won't be any survivors.
That's right.
What do you want future generations to know about the Holocaust?
It is a real experience. It's not based on any opinions. It's based on factuals. So it needs to be perpetrated just like all parts of history. And to cut out and say, well, I like to learn about this part of history and this part of history, but this part, I don't want to hear about it. No, you can't do that.
What you just heard is just part of Pete's story. You can hear more from him tonight at the West Ada School District building at 6 p.m. Again, last night he told the story for the first time to Boise residents here in Boise, and nearly 500 people were in that room. Wow. I actually talked to someone who got a chance to listen to it last night, and she said it was a little overwhelming seeing the amount of young people in the room wanting to learn. Yeah. And a lot of people that came up to him afterwards were young people asking questions as well. Well,
that's what my question is there a chance to ask questions? Because I have so many. And I'm sure so many others do. With 500 people, we probably couldn't obviously answer all of them. But I will say for 90, he looks amazing. Or
he
nearly
does.
90.
89, almost 90.
It's amazing. All right, a great story to see. Again, tonight in Meridian. All right, thank you very much, Aspen.
you spent your day in Boise, this is what you woke up to this morning. But the good news is, as our Wednesday progressed, that fog burned off and we got some blue sky and sunshine, at least over the city of trees. Not the case for the lower Treasure Valley, west of Boise, Nampa, Caldwell, Ontario. That's our current visibility, below a mile, and it's been about like that the entire day. So here's what it looks like out in Payette County. This is I-84 and Highway 95. We have just been socked in Canyon County. I've not seen the sunshine over our home in Nampa. I think this is the third day in a row. So it was nice to come into Boise and see the blue sky. You can always head up in elevation, of course, too, during an inversion to see the blue sky. But it's not only been foggy and frosty, it's been very cold. Upper 20s, that's where we're sitting right now for Ontario, Nampa, and Caldwell. We're in the 30s for Boise and Mountain Home. We were in the mid 40s in Twin Falls. Temperatures, though, starting to drop as that sun is going down. 37 in Haley. It's currently 20 in Stanley. So, of course, the culprit behind these conditions right now, this strong ridge of high pressure that's trapping all of that cold air and moisture at the surface. It is going to hold steady through at least Friday. Then we're watching a system far off to the west that will finally this weekend come in and shake things up for us. It'll actually warm temperatures, even though this is a cold front coming in late Saturday, but it will get things back to where they belong in our atmosphere. No more inversion, but still we have to get through a couple more days of it, Thursday and Friday. Then we see some showers and breezier conditions over the weekend.
So Caldwell police tried to unveil a car designed for autism awareness last year, but they pulled it because, well, that design featuring puzzle pieces didn't go over too well in the autism community. But they have one this year. All right, final moments of the show. Let's get to your comments, like this one from B&B in Nampa, who says, any medical decisions, and I mean any medical decisions, left between the physician and the patient's family. No lawmaker should ever be involved in a decision that affects somebody else's health. I really wish people would understand this once and for all. Sheila says, it's such hypocrisy that the state is all about parents' rights to determine a child's health care, except in the case of transgender health care. And Kip says, transgender rights, just like abortion, can be outlawed, but isn't going to stop anyone who needs it, even children. Finally, if most of Oregon doesn't want to be in Oregon anymore, why don't they just start their own state and leave ours alone? They talked about it. Remember the state of Jefferson? It's tough to make it exist. We'll see you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.